opportunity to study their functions, and see how we can exploit them, how we can manipulate these cannabinoids and the receptors to find cures for a large number of diseases currently in which there is particularly no cure.
Just smoke weed.
As an immunologist, Dr. Niagara Kadi and his researchers at the University of South Carolina are exploring the impact cannabinoids and the CB2 receptors have on the human immune system. Both U.S. reports on marijuana found the cannabinoids do suppress the immune system, and previously this was seen as a concern. But Dr. Niagara Kadi believes tamping down the immune system could be a good thing. Is a concern, but Dr. Niagara Kadi believes tamping down the immune system could be a good thing.
There are about 80 different autoimmune diseases, and basically autoimmune diseases are triggered by your immune system going haywire, getting hyperactivated and destroying certain cells and certain tissues.
In multiple sclerosis, for example, the immune system suddenly begins attacking the brain and the spinal cord. Rheumatoid arthritis and lupus are similar diseases caused by the chronic inflammation associated with an immune system gone amok.
The cannabinoids dampen down response to bacteria or foreign agents or injury to tissues.
A lot of scientists and researchers are interested in those properties of the cannabinoids in trying to see how we can suppress the immune response in autoimmune disease conditions.
For Dr. Niagara Kadi, the research has gone far beyond treating inflammatory problems. He's narrowing in on the potential of cannabinoids to kill immune cells that have mutated and become cancerous. Once they become cancerous, they no longer die a normal cell death. Instead, they begin growing and spreading uncontrollably.
We were one of the first labs to demonstrate basically that not only the immune cells, the normal immune cells express these cannabinoid receptors called the CB2 receptors, but also that when these immune cells get transformed and they become cancer, to our surprise, we found that these cancer cells continue to express these CB2 receptors.
This was an exciting discovery because the CB2 receptor acts like a target for the cannabinoids. Once they bind with the receptor, they can tell the cancer cell to die.
So basically telling the cells basically to commit suicide, and that's what they do. And we demonstrated that that would be the mechanism by which the cannabinoids can kill the cancer, and therefore it can be used effectively as an anti-cancer agent.
Dr. Niagara Kadi and his researchers were able to eradicate almost 100% of the cancer in test tubes. But they were skeptical they would see similar results when they moved on to tumors in mice.
To our surprise, we found that almost 25 to 30% of the mice completely rejected the tumor. They were completely cured. And in addition, we found that the remaining mice also, there was a significant reduction in the volume or the size of the tumors as well.
The lab results have been so promising that Dr. Niagara Kadi is beginning clinical trials with leukemia patients. There's no doubt in his mind that the cannabinoids, either from the plant or lab created, will play a major role in medicine in the future.
I feel that in the next 5 or 10 years, there is going to be exponential growth in cannabinoid research.
It's an area where both the critics and the advocates agree. Scientists are now well on their way to developing medicines based on the cannabinoids. It begs the question, however, will modern medicine eventually make the marijuana plant obsolete?
No, it will not. In fact, it will only enhance it. Okay, because now it's more proof that the plant really does work. Okay, and instead of spending $600 a month on buying the pharmaceutical drug, I can grow my own plants.
They may come across some things that are better than herbal marijuana for one thing or another, and good luck to them. I'd love that. But I never want to see compromise the capacity of people to use herbal marijuana, whether it's because the drug that they've come up with is much more expensive, or it doesn't do as well, or whatever the reason. That people should always have herbal marijuana available to them without any constraints from the law.
You say without any constraints from the law.
Cannabis use. Anywhere. You can't find one.
In 10,000 years of known use of marijuana, there's never been a single death attributed to marijuana. There's 400,000 deaths in America alone every year that are directly attributed to tobacco.
I've heard that you have to smoke something like 15,000 joints in 20 minutes to get a toxic amount of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. I challenge anybody to do that. And even in the animal studies where people have loaded the animals up with doses that would be hundreds of times what a human could possibly be exposed to, no, the animals don't die. The LD50 seems to be astronomical.
You can die from ingesting too much aspirin. You can die from ingesting too much coffee.
The drug warriors who say we have to protect society, save these people, are being just a little bit disingenuous.
Now, why would pharmaceuticals be threatened by a plant? The answer may be as simple as one word: natural. Because a significant amount of research to date has confirmed or suggested that marijuana in its natural state is still the most effective form. Can you imagine a world where you or I wouldn't have to pay for certain medicines?
After dealing with about 10,000 patients over the last 15 years, I would say that over 200 different medical conditions respond favorably to cannabis.
It appears to have
200
benefits that we never ever knew about.
Glaucoma,
Epilepsy, muscular dystrophy,
Arthritis,
Multiple sclerosis,
Wasting syndrome,
Nausea, chronic pain,
depression, anxiety, hepatitis C, cancer.
chemo.
AIDS patients.
Is there a product out there today that provides as many medical benefits as cannabis?
No.
Smoke that,
It
dog.
remains an unutilized major resource.
The way to riches in the pharmaceutical industry is to have a drug which can be patented.
Cannabis is problematic right from the start because it's a multi-molecule drug.
In 1930, it wasn't possible to patent plants, and that's the reason that pharma never picked up on this, because by synthesizing and owning compounds, that's where the profit motive comes into the pharmaceutical industry.
The patent in the United States lasts for 20 years. Well, you can charge whatever you want at that time, and that's where you make the killing.
There's no money to be made off natural plants. If you can use a natural medicine that you can grow in your own home, which costs pennies to use, you're going to do that.
you need water and dirt. Not only that, you have that plant forever.
Prime motivation behind any drug company is to make money, and as much money as possible.
They're corporations, and corporations, everybody knows that it's like that diffusion of responsibility thing. There's so many people working for corporations that they lose their humanity.
So those are potential customers for these pharmaceutical companies that are not there if they're using a natural plant.
It's unlimited. You grow more, you get more medicine. Pharmaceutical companies don't want you growing your own medicine.
The government supported a small drug company by the name of Unimed to take a synthetic THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and to put it into capsules to be used as a oral medicine. This became Marinol. This THC in Marinol is exactly the same 21 carbon molecule that's in herbal marijuana. But it's not the same as medical marijuana. It's not a crude mixture of things, and there's no guarantee that you get the same results.
You can make a synthetic delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol in a test tube. It'll have exactly the same number of atoms and the same arrangement. But how in the test tube can you put the electron spins together, the subatomic quirks and quarks, if you like, of that compound in the same way that a biological enzyme system will put it together? It can't happen.
In the case of a synthetic compound, if it's only an ingredient from the cannabis, they can formulate that as a drug and make a lot more money out of it.
I have a lot of faith in pharmaceutical companies and their ability to make money. And I think that if you take a look at what's going on now, first off, you've got an awful lot of basic science that's going on in regards to cannabis and cannabinoids. And some of this research is being paid for by pharmaceutical companies.
We know that this compound extracted from cannabis is non-toxic in patients because it has already been used for different kind of disease.
The benefits may not stop there. Scientists say the cannabis compound may fight other aggressive cancers, including prostate cancer. The next step, animal studies, then clinical trials. So it may be several years before patients may benefit from a cannabis cancer fighter.
Cannabis contains 421 chemicals, more than 60 of which are cannabinoids. Cannabinoids are a unique class of compounds, not found anywhere else in nature.
Now about your
A
cannabinoids.
colorful plant with antioxidant activity, cannabis is subject to few predators and has even been utilized as an insect repellent.
It's quite an amazing spectrum of compounds that are in that plant. And what's so unique and incredible about them is they are touching on this incredible system that pervades all of us and regulates everything from, I tell people, cradle to grave, because it's in mother's milk. What our cannabinoid system is evolved to do over many hundreds of millions of years has been to protect us from those kinds of imbalances, to restore the kind of health that we need. And because of our environment in particular, and because we are living longer, we need to be able to adapt very rapidly today. And we can't do that on an evolutionary scale. The way for us to do that as people, as intelligent people, is to make sure we're eating good diets, stay away from toxins, and eat these essential fatty acids, and when necessary, consume cannabinoids.
Modern medicine, under the pharmaceutical-based paradigm, has been looking for targeted therapies. So instead of looking for a medicine that can treat nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, depression, pain, anxiety, we look for something that can block, this enzyme inside the cell's membrane. And so that's, what we're taught is medicine. The other things are considered snake oil. Anything that can do that many things that effectively makes people a little bit leery.
The ganja plant herself is an expression of the goddess. It is known as Siddhi, Prana, Shakti, Bhangi, Gangi, Amrit, amongst many other names. Some simple yogic, tantric invocation mantras for partaking of ganja are Alak, Alak Niranjan, Bam Bam Bholenath, Bom Shiva, Om Namah Shivaya, Hara Hara Ganga, Alak. Also, Kailash Pati Bole Mati, Kailash Pati Bole Mati, meaning Lord of the Kailash mountain with the simple mind. In Jamaica, ganja is also called Kali weed, deriving from Kali Ma, the black mother goddess who the herb is often offered to in magic rites. Prayer, thanks, and mantra before partaking always increases the high and upful vibrations. The Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church has this to say about marijuana. The area with the widest cultural use of psychoactive hemp is probably the African continent. Marijuana was a part of the native way of life when white men first arrived in Africa, a continent of cannabis cultures where marijuana was an integral part of religious ceremony. Africans were observed inhaling the smoke from piles of smoldering hemp. Some of these piles were placed upon altars. Africans also utilized pipes. The African Daga marijuana cults believed that holy cannabis was brought to earth by the gods. A sacred device used to partake of herbs is common in all the ganja traditions. Names for these include chilam in India, also called that in Jamaica, chalice and chalwar from the Rastafari culture, kanupa, and Calumet are from the Native American culture, also known as the peace pipe. The pipe is considered an altar or even a deity that can be shared in communion with fellow participants to come into vibrational alignment with the group, or to work magic or offer prayers to Great Spirit, Mahapurusha, Haile Selassie I. When we examine the last chapter of the Bible, Revelations chapter 22, verse 2, we find some important information related to the tree of life. which was mentioned first in Genesis at the Garden of Eden. The verse reads, "The tree of life which bears 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations." In the Bible, fruits are known as works, or produce. What something can bring forth. Marijuana certainly has 12 or more productive uses it can bring forth, and it can do so monthly. Following are 12 common uses and works of the ganja plant that can definitely assist in healing the nations. Food, clothes, shelter, medicine, prayer and meditation, cosmetics, industrial uses, sustainable agriculture, improving the economy, improving education, paper, and transportation. All of these fruits have been produced by ganja, and if we used marijuana to its full capabilities, we could probably heal most, if not all, the ills of the world. And I express heartfelt gratitude for the holy ganja, tree of life. I Selassie,
Natural state is still the most.
Take a look at the word cannabis. Ever wonder what it means? Cannabis is a Greek word, although its root is African. In Greek, canna means canine or dog, and bis or bi is the number 2. So cannabis is the two-dog plant. There's a cannabis-loving tribe in Mali, West Africa called the Dogon tribe. A fairly well-documented group. The Dogons were visited by Herodotus, a Greek traveler and chronicler, around 300 BC. He was fortunate enough to have visited the Dogons during a year-long celebration that took place every 50 years. Explaining their celebration, the Dogons pointed to the brightest star in the winter sky, Sirius, and said it was the two-dog star, and that it was the home of the two-dog plant, cannabis. The two-dog plant, they said, was brought to our planet from the goddess of the two-dog star. Their year-long celebration was in honor of that star. All this would be easy to dismiss if it weren't for the fact that the Dogons possessed specific knowledge about the Sirian system for thousands of years before scientists with modern telescopes and equipment could catch up and prove them right. The Dogons had specific knowledge about Sirius B, a white dwarf star which they called Potolo. They knew that it was a white star, and that it was extremely small, and that it was the heaviest star in its grouping. They were able to describe its elliptical orbit with Sirius A, its 50-year orbital period, and the fact that the star rotated on its own axis. Sirius B is invisible to the naked eye, and so it's difficult to observe, even though through a telescope, or no pictures were taken until 1970. They also described a third star in the Sirius system, which they called Emaya in 1995.
Merriweather, because security is a private matter. What can I do for you?
Why would they not be dead on with their...
A helicopter has been dispatched.
It is, after all, named after that two-dog star. What do you think about the connection? Is cannabis really from out of this world?
The etymology and spiritual history of cannabis and other words associated with it may shed some light on this miraculous plant and friend of humankind. Cannabis is made up of two words, canna and bis. Canna, or cannabosum in Hebrew, is the name for marijuana and was a major part
I'm landing. Stay clear of the blades.
Going deeper, we can find the phonetic similarity of canna with canine or dog. This proves more interesting when we take into account bis meaning two. The Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa, say that cannabis
Where are we going?
from the two-dog star.
Have you ever thought about taking some flying lessons?
Dog in it.
It's easy.
Another star we can't leave out in this discussion is cannabis, which of course sounds just like cannabis. It comes from the Egyptian word kahinu, meaning golden earth, which can certainly refer to the golden green earth that cannabis forms. Yet in Greek,
I wanted to be a stuntman, but I failed the exam.
Dog. This relates it with Sirius. Isis, or Aset, is associated with Sirius, and her name is also Mari, meaning beloved in Egypt. And Mari is an ancient Syrian
Remember to strap on your parachute.
Aset. So the word marijuana contains the name Mari, or the name of the goddess. The Juana is related to Juan, or John the Baptist. This plant was the feminine
Just look at the view.
in esoteric baptisms, hence the feminine form of Juan, Juana. Cannabis in Egypt was also associated with Abraxas in Yalda Baal, the serpent lion, often found in magical alchemical Gnostic texts, who is known to protect against disease and poison.
Sorry if it's a little bumpy back there. I'm hungover.
The word Ganga comes from the Ganges River in India. The Ganges is often seen in Shiva's locks. Shiva is the great god, or the creator, preserver, destroyer. This originates from the story of Ganges River coming down from the Himalaya mountains and
My dad wanted me to be a pilot.
by Shiva's
I wanted to
locks
cut
in
hair
order
and
to
bob
prevent an
mullet.
earth cataclysm. Most Shivites and sadhus partake of the sacred Ganges sacrament. Just like bathing in the Ganges River, it is said by bathing in the vibrations of the plant.
Get back here! Oh!
Some traditions in India say the marijuana plant came forth during the churning of the ocean of nectar, a story in which the gods and demons ended up working together to extract the nectar of immortality and vitality. When scattered drops of the nectar ended up falling from heaven to earth, the marijuana plant sprouted up at all these varying locations. This is said to be when Ganga received the name Vijaya, or victory, commemorating the god's success. The Raja Vallabha of India, a materia medica believed to be ancient, states this about Indra's food, or Shiva Prasada. It creates vital energy, the mental powers, and internal heat, corrects irregularities of phlegmatic humor, and is an elixir of life. It was originally produced like nectar from the ocean by churning of Mount Mandara, and inasmuch as it gives victory to the three worlds, it is the delight of gods, called Vijaya, the victorious. This desire-fulfilling substance was obtained by men on earth through desire for the welfare of all people. To those who regularly use it, it begets joy and destroys every anxiety.
Dozens of major studies have been published in the last few years that indicate that the chemicals in cannabis, in the lab and in animals, have a significant effect on fighting almost all major cancers, including brain, breast, prostate, lung, thyroid, colon, skin, pituitary, melanoma, and leukemia cancers. They do this by promoting the death of cancer cells that have forgotten how to die, as well as a reduction in their crucial blood supply, while leaving healthy cells untouched. But why, you may wonder, would cannabis have any effect on cancer? The answer can be explained in one word: endocannabinoids. Amazing as it sounds, we're all born with a form of cannabis already in our bodies. It's called the endocannabinoid system.
What the fuck did you say?
Endocannabinoid system, or ECS, influences multiple physiological processes. This intricate system modulates energy intake as well as nutrient transport, metabolism, and storage. A complete completely natural collection of compounds. Endocannabinoids are our body's own form of marijuana and are involved in most of our cells and structures. They control a variety of functions in the nervous system, heart, reproductive, and immune systems. Endocannabinoid messengers help the cells communicate. Typically, they protect our good cells while killing the bad ones, like cancer cells. In all animals, the nervous system is made of the same components, large numbers of nerve cells carrying electrical signals. And wherever the cells meet, these signals are passed to a receptor in the next cell by a chemical messenger called a neurotransmitter. Inside the brain, there are different types of neurotransmitters,
Sounds like a computer.
dopamine and serotonin. All animals, from rodents to fish to elephants to humans, have inherited this basic structure. But hundreds of millions of years ago, the sea squirt and other primitive invertebrates evolved an innovation to this system.
What happened was the nervous system acquired a new chemical, if you like, that had a new flavor, a new type of chemical. And it's this chemical that is related in structure, has a similar shape to the chemical that's found in cannabis.
Because of this similarity, these new signals came to be known as cannabinoids. It was inevitable that eventually cannabis would meet its perfect partner. Us. Whether you like it or not, each and every one of us is fundamentally wired to respond to cannabis.
Now, receptors are not built in our brain or anywhere in our body, of course, or animal bodies, because there is a plant out there that will produce a compound that acts on them. That just doesn't work that way. Receptors are found in our body because we produce compound that will activate those receptors. So obviously we thought that there should be endogenous compounds which act on the tetrahydrocannabinol, the THC, which acts on those receptors. It's just a quirk of nature. My good Italian friend Di Maso summarized the activity, which is really a summary. Says, well, what do the endocannabinoids do? They relax, help us eat, sleep, forget, and protect. Not remember, forget. And don't think that forgetting is less important than recalling. We should have a system to forget. Otherwise, well, if you wish, we can burst. If you go down a mall and see 1,000 faces, do you want to remember all of them? Of course not.
What's especially fascinating is that while significant numbers of endocannabinoids are not normally found in breast and prostate cells, the homes for the two leading forms of cancer, it appears that large quantities show up only after normal cells begin to progress toward a state of uncontrolled growth in a desperate attempt to restrain the tumorous invaders. The endocannabinoids already in our bodies did an efficient job for hundreds of thousands of years, working as tumor regulators, free radical scavengers, and anti-inflammatory agents. But then, once we entered the industrial age with all its pollution and chemical doctoring of food, the endocannabinoids became overwhelmed and couldn't keep up with the task of keeping us healthy and protected from toxins. Better public health helped us live longer, but unfortunately, human beings became inundated with the free radicals our bodies produce naturally by simply being alive, along with an unprecedented avalanche of carcinogens and contaminants, including pharmaceutical drugs. The endocannabinoids needed help. Enter cannabis. When marijuana is consumed and broken down into a collection of cannabinoid molecules, the THC and its sisters seek out and bind with the endocannabinoid receptors already inside us. Together, they give the body more ammunition against all of the diseases of modern times.
And let me show you what we have. So, this is an image from our subject from today. The receptors are highlighted in what color? In bright red. Well, any color that you see, there are receptors. And red is the really dense areas. And you can see there's a lot of red and yellow. Green and blue are the really not dense areas where there are not many receptors in our brain. So they really are everywhere. Yes, yes. In fact, they're the densest receptors, one of the densest receptors in the brain, most populated throughout the entire brain. Right into the brain. Look how hot that is. Wow. Right in the brain. But there's also cannabinoid receptors in the liver. Also, look at the bone marrow, the vertebral column, the ribs, So how do you think what we're seeing here in this image, how does that relate to the experience of using cannabis? Well, look at the amount of cannabinoid receptors in the brain. A lot of them. A lot of the effects of cannabis use are in the brain. Euphoria, as an anxiolytic, it dissolves your anxiety, or it can even cause your anxiety. So cannabis abusers or cannabis users talk about having this high, the euphoria. That's probably from some of the deep structures in the brain.
Scientists are now experimenting to see which parts of the pot plant, including its cannabinoids and other biological compounds, might be the most effective against a variety of diseases, including diabetes and cancer.
Special scientist weed, boy.
In the late 1980s, scientists would discover the endocannabinoid system within the human body. Now, this would lay waste to claims for decades. The cannabinoids had no beneficial purpose for human consumption.
Obesity, particularly abdominal obesity, and the associated cardiometabolic complications are critical areas of investigation. The endocannabinoid system helps to regulate the central control of energy balance and peripheral metabolic processes, both of which may contribute to cardiometabolic risk factors. The endocannabinoid system, or ECS, influences multiple physiologic processes. This intricate system modulates energy intake, as well as nutrient transport, metabolism, and storage. The ECS regulates these processes through endogenous ligands, such as anandamide and 2-arachidonylglycerol, and the CB1 receptor. CB1 receptors are located in the brain, digestive tract, muscle, and adipose tissue. Integration of these central and peripheral ECS components is achieved through neuronal and hormonal signaling. Within the brain, CB1 receptors are among the most abundant G-protein-coupled receptors. However, in contrast to classical signaling, where information travels from pre- to post-synaptic neurons, the ECS uses retrograde signaling. The information travels from post- to presynaptic neuron. Let's take a closer look at this mechanism using a glutamatergic neuron model. When an action potential reaches the axon terminal, membrane depolarization triggers the release of glutamate. Glutamate binds to postsynaptic glutamate receptors, inducing calcium channels to open. During periods of intense neural activity, calcium accumulates in the postsynaptic neuron. This calcium buildup causes the synthesis and release of endocannabinoids from membrane lipids. Diffusing across the synaptic cleft, the endocannabinoids bind to the CB1 receptor, activating the G proteins. Activation influences ion flow. The result, suppression of presynaptic neurotransmitter release. Endocannabinoids are subsequently taken back into the cell and enzymatically degraded. In addition to acting as neural messengers, endocannabinoids mediate paracrine and autocrine signaling in adipocytes, hepatocytes, and other cells. Endocannabinoid system activity in the central nervous system regulates food intake. For example, ECS stimulation by hunger and fasting signals stimulates appetite and increases the palatability of food. Endocannabinoids slow gastric emptying and GI transit and appear to stimulate secretion of ghrelin, a neuropeptide that increases appetite and food intake. After eating, cholecystokinin in the duodenum triggers satiety signals.
There's the boss.
Subsequently, ECS activity is decreased through suppression of CB1 expression. An increase in the adiposity hormone leptin decreases endocannabinoid levels in the hypothalamus and decreases food intake.
Get a spliff, rude boy.
ECS regulation of peripheral metabolism influences energy balance. Stimulation of the ECS increases food intake and adiposity.
Make you want to
Conversely, blocking CB1 receptors reduces food intake and adiposity. In the liver, ECS stimulation can lead to lipogenesis through the activation of hepatic lipogenic enzymes and increased fatty acid synthesis. Chronic stimulation of the ECS is associated with dyslipidemia. Activation of CB1 receptors increases expression of SREBP1C, a lipogenic transcription factor, and increases fatty acid synthesis. SREBP1C increases production of lipogenic enzymes, ACC1, and fatty acid synthase. Increased fatty acid synthesis can lead to production of large triglyceride-rich VLDL. Large triglyceride-rich VLDL sets the stage for the atherogenic lipid profile of small, dense LDL, decreased levels of atheroprotective HDL, and overall increases in cholesterol and triglyceride levels. Adiponectin, another hormone secreted by adipocytes, regulates lipid and glucose metabolism. Adiponectin is believed to regulate fatty acid oxidation in muscle and liver, thus improving insulin sensitivity. CB1 receptor stimulation in adipocytes reduces adiponectin, while CB1 blockade increases adiponectin synthesis. Metabolic dysregulation leads to a constellation of symptoms including abdominal obesity, atherogenic dyslipidemia, hypertension, insulin resistance, prothrombotic state, and pro-inflammatory state. As basic and clinical research progresses, we will continue to increase our understanding of the central and peripheral endocannabinoid system and its role in the regulation of metabolic function.
There you have it. In one plain video.
Good song.
Cannabis could be
Good.
mankind's symbiotic plant. Until next time, I'm William Martin, Cannabis Science.
Keep blazing it up. All right.
In the normal transmission of pain, ascending nociceptive signals travel up the spinal thalamic pathway to the thalamus, where they are processed and relayed to cortical and other areas. The ascending pathway also relates to the periaqueductal gray matter, an important part of the descending pain modulating system, where specific cannabinoid receptors are located. Stimulation of the periaqueductal gray is known to produce an analgesic effect. However, this neuroregulatory process is thought to be tonically restricted by inhibitory GABAergic off cells. Ascending pain signals relayed through the periaqueductal gray suppress the activity of GABAergic off cells through cannabinoid modulation, thereby increasing activity in the descending pain modulation pathway and increasing the analgesic effect. This is called depolarization-induced suppression of inhibition. A synaptic feedback mechanism is believed to be an inherent part of our normal neuroregulatory processes, including descending pain modulation. In many regions of the CNS, including the periaqueductal gray, the generation of postsynaptic action potentials is modified by an endogenous cannabinoid regulatory system. Endogenous cannabinoids are synthesized on demand from the phospholipid bilayer of the postsynaptic membrane. These lipophilic ligands are released directly into the synaptic cleft and act in retrograde fashion on the presynaptic neuron where the cannabinoid receptors are expressed. Binding of the endogenous cannabinoids
waking up, yeah? Make a spliff, that's what you're saying.
Neurotransmitter release. This
Bill
in
it.
turn influences the frequency of postsynaptic firing.
Been an error. Ugh, okay, I get it.
Of exogenous cannabinoids
I did
orally
something.
through
I see
inhalation
that.
may therefore provide an option for treating pain that has responded poorly to conventional pain therapy. When exogenous cannabinoids are administered orally, they travel via the GI tract to the liver, where they are metabolized before entering the bloodstream and then the CNS. The onset of action from oral administration is less rapid compared to the inhaled route. When exogenous cannabinoids are inhaled, they travel through the respiratory tract to the alveoli of the lung, where they diffuse rapidly into the circulatory system. They then travel through the bloodstream towards the CNS, where they diffuse across the blood-brain barrier and into the surrounding tissues of the brain and spinal cord.
Frozen, you
Exogenous
bitch.
cannabinoids exert their modulatory effects upon the abundant cannabinoid receptors distributed throughout the
Fucking
CNS.
glitched out again. What the fuck?
The effects of cannabinoids may be illustrated by comparing three neuronal synapses showing normal pain transmission, the influence of endogenous cannabinoid, and the influence of exogenous cannabinoid administration.
What about your cannabinoids?
From the bloodstream bind to cannabinoid receptors on the presynaptic neuron and mimic the endogenous synaptic modulatory effect by
Fucking
decreasing influx of
genius.
calcium ions. In this way, pain and other neural processes are modulated. The clinical effects of exogenous cannabinoid administration are not limited to pain and have proven effects including the reduction of anxiety, spasticity,
He's pulling me all over the place.
the development of novel drugs to modulate endogenous cannabinoid reuptake and metabolism may also prove beneficial in pain therapy. The therapeutic benefits of cannabinoids, including modification of the endogenous cannabinoid signaling system, should be further explored through clinical research.
Fuck it.
Despite all the difficulties, there's a group of doctors in the U.S. and abroad who have been advancing the research on the medical use of cannabis with highly impressive and sometimes revolutionary discoveries.
In a scholarly cancer review article published in 2009, there were over 421 chemical compounds identified in the cannabis plant. And within this group of natural substances, there are many chemicals that have significant anti-tumor properties at low enough doses to where they would be effective cancer treatments. That's an important part of this. It's one thing to be able to kill a cancer cell, but could you really survive such a treatment?
A botanist from the University of Colorado Springs branch, Robert Melanie, who has written an article sort of comparing the carcinogenic effect of cannabis with tobacco and explaining why he thinks that cannabis has the anti-cancer effect for lung cancer.
There's nothing else that impacts on so many of our illnesses. You see, when I talk about these age-related illnesses, we're all aging. We don't all come down with cardiovascular disease. We don't all come down with autoimmune disease. We don't all come down with cognitive dysfunction. We don't all come down with cancer. But the chances are we're going to come down with one of them. All right? And here we have this one drug that's able to help us holistically with our biochemistry to restore balance. Now, cannabis kills cancer cells in many cases. People are not aware of that. They think cancer, cannabis, anti-nausea. It's way beyond that.
There are also studies taking a look at other organ systems that have found that marijuana seeks out the cancer cells and preferentially kills them over cancer cells.
There's a wealth of laboratory evidence that these anti-tumor properties kill cancer cells in a variety of ways. There are multiple mechanisms of action identified by which cannabis kills cancer cells, and they're divided into various categories. And among these are anti-proliferative effects. Normally, that's one of the hallmarks of a cancer cell, is that it just keeps reproducing. So if you stop the reproduction, that's an anti-proliferative effect. There are anti-angiogenesis effects, and this means that the cannabinoids will stop the tumor from being able to elaborate or grow new blood vessels to support the growth of the tumor. There are anti-metastatic effects, and that is simple enough to mean that the cannabinoids block the ability of the cancer cells to spread into other tissues. And there's another effect that has a wild name, apoptotic effect. Apoptosis refers to the ability of cannabinoids to speed the death of the abnormal cells. And that's something that is especially important in cancer, because you're able to hasten the death of the cell without disturbing the normal cells around it.
Seth Research Laboratories in California have recently demonstrated that in some tumors, cancer cells are killed by marijuana, while the other healthy cells are left untouched. Cells that stop moving and become still white dots are dead cancer cells. The ability of cannabinoids to kill bad cells while protecting healthy ones is particularly important when we're talking about brain cancer because of the so-called blood-brain barrier. The brain has to be sheltered from outside influences that might hitch a ride on the bloodstream and cause havoc. What is exciting and unique about cannabinoids is that they can pass through the blood-brain barrier because of their slippery, fat-loving nature. Cannabinoids get right into the brain's cancer cells by moving easily through the cell's membranes, which are also composed of lipids.
As the primary active constituent of the medicinal plant cannabis, also known as marijuana, most people are familiar with the euphoric effects of this compound. After entering the bloodstream, this compound becomes available to individual cells in the brain. Delta-9 THC interacts with specific cell surface receptors. It is analogous to a key entering a lock. This triggers a reaction inside the cell. Unexpectedly, this reaction in normal cells is significantly different compared to the reaction in cancer cells. In cancer cells, these reactions lead to cell death. In normal cells, it doesn't. This surprising difference is likely due to two things: a greater number of receptors on the outside of the cancer cells, and a different type of reaction inside the cancer cells as compared to the normal cells.
So what we found, the major finding, is that if you combine CBD with THC, you actually enhance the anti-cancer effects of THC. It's been previously reported that THC was effective at inhibiting aggressive brain cancers in vivo, and this, what they call preclinical data, led to a small clinical trial in Spain. So there's been quite a bit of literature suggesting that if you combine cannabinoids, actually different components of cannabinoids, THC and other similar compounds and similar in structure, that you might be able to enhance the activity of that individual compound. So this is the hypothesis that we worked with. We screened a variety of cannabinoids and against many different types of cancers. And from that screen, we found that this compound called cannabidiol, which happens to be the second most abundant cannabinoid in the plant cannabis, was actually the most active compound in when we were testing its ability to inhibit many different types of aggressive cancers. So we combined this compound along with THC in culture dishes of aggressive brain cancer cells. And what we found is we got a synergistic improvement in the ability of THC to not only inhibit the growth of these aggressive brain cancer cells, but also to cause programmed cell death, which is very important because you actually want to kill these tumor cells so they don't have the ability to grow back. So that's really the major finding. And also within that, we were able to find specific molecular mechanisms that might explain why combining the two compounds makes for a more efficient treatment. And so we're hoping maybe to use that finding to potentially improve treatments, not only aggressive brain cancer, but perhaps in other aggressive cancers.
The evidence is piling up in mice-infested labs that the endocannabinoid system, when stimulated by cannabinoids, has an anti-tumor effect and can instruct cancer cells to commit suicide.
This was done by Manuel Guzman's group within the past. We showed there was that originally that THC, when injected into a brain tumor in mice and rats, a significant number of those animals the tumor would regress and disappear, so that you actually had survival of rats that would otherwise die. And they examined all the surrounding nerve tissue, and that was all fine, because remember, once again, cannabinoids protect nerves.
Dr. Manuel Guzman is a professor of biochemistry and molecular biology in Madrid, Spain, and is known for his groundbreaking studies on medical cannabis.
Observado que los cannabinoides tienen un efecto inductor de la muerte de las células tumorales, un efecto inhibidor de lo que es el crecimiento, la multiplicación de las células tumorales. Lo que hacen es disminuir el crecimiento de los tumores.
If cannabis might be the miracle cancer cure that everybody know about it,
people have a hard time believing that cannabis can have all of these fantastic effects that are described. But what we're doing is we're just stimulating a natural system that's already there. This has been developing for hundreds of millions of years. The invertebrates, the sea squirts, the hydra, there are primitive endocannabinoid systems in those organisms dating back 600-700 million years ago. The cannabis plant came along maybe 50 or 60 million years ago.
Cannabis is a natural substance and therefore can't be patented. Anyone with a green thumb can grow it, and so its production could be in the hands of the people, not the corporations that run a $200 billion a year cancer business. It may not be a coincidence that pharmaceutical companies are silently preparing for what could easily become a total revolution in the curing habits of the world's population. GW Pharmaceuticals, a company that specializes in the study and commercialization of cannabinoids, has already established a full-cycle facility in an undisclosed location in the south of England, where they oversee the cultivation of the plant right to the finished medical product. Growing areas? This facility grows 30 to 60,000 plants every year. Once the marijuana is ready for processing, it undergoes the same exact treatment for extraction and refinement that is forbidden to regular citizens around the world.
Amazingly, GW Pharmaceuticals, who is this company that has 6 greenhouses in a secret location in the south of England, and each greenhouse has a different strain of marijuana in it. Each greenhouse has 10,000 plants in it. Each of the plants is a clone of the other. So they've standardized this stuff. Now, their product was approved for sale in Canada for treatment of multiple sclerosis, the muscle spasm, and the pain related to that.
And this is a spray.
This is an under-the-tongue spray. And the reason they went with the spray was they felt that they would have a hard time getting by the regulators if they had people smoke it.
In the United States, things are moving fast as well.
Breast cancer kills more than 41,000 American women every year. Researchers in the San Francisco lab are working to shrink that number, and they're doing it with an unusual weapon, marijuana, or at least a compound from it.
And what we found is that this compound called cannabidiol was particularly effective at inhibiting aggressive breast cancers.
Intriguing answers started appearing in the early 90s when researchers pinpointed receptors in the brain and the body that bind with the cannabinoids. Receptors can be described as locks on the surface of a cell, and when the correct key binds with the correct lock or receptor, it opens the door and delivers messages. Sometimes the message is that the body is feeling pain. Other times the message may be that there's an invader and the immune system must attack.
Scientists located 2 receptors
cannabinoid receptors, one called the CB1 receptor, mainly in the brain, and the other is the CB2 receptor, which is mainly in cells of the immune system.
The CB1 receptors are extremely abundant in the brain, but they're also found all over the body in the major organs, the heart, the liver, kidneys, and pancreas. After finding all these locks that accepted the cannabis key, researchers made the next big discovery. The human body makes its own cannabinoids, called endocannabinoids.
We have this whole elaborate system where we have these receptors in our brain and in our immune system, and these circulating chemicals that we produce ourselves that really are very, very similar to the chemicals in the marijuana plant.
The only difference is that the endocannabinoids that we produce are in such small quantities, and they're also rapidly degraded, so that therefore we are not high all the time, or we don't have that feeling of euphoria all the time.
Dr. Prakash Nayagarkati is a professor of pathology and microbiology at the University of South Carolina. For the last decade, he's been doing research on what's become known as the human endocannabinoid system.
The precise functions of the endocannabinoid system is still being understood, actually.
The discovery of the system, however, is already revealing clues that have bolstered the personal stories of relief. The areas of the brain that control nausea and vomiting, chronic pain, and epileptic seizures all have cannabinoid receptors.
What do these things do? Well, in the brain and the nervous system, the cannabinoid system seems to exert kind of a dampening effect. It's kind of an internal, like to think of it as a neurological shock absorber.
And when they looked in other animals, they found these receptors were present in basically all animal species. So why do dogs and monkeys, for example, need to have cannabinoid receptors?
They must be playing a very critical role in trying to maintain some of the physiological functions.
The whole development of the fact that there are cannabinoid receptors and endocannabinoids has really given drug companies and pharmaceutical investigators a lot of opportunity to try to manipulate the body's own cannabinoid system.
That's because now they can create synthetic drugs that target the receptors instead of taking chemicals from the plant. By avoiding the plant, they get around the controversies and complications of its Schedule I status. A search of the U.S. patent database reveals numerous large pharmaceutical companies have filed recent patents claiming their cannabinoid receptor drug has the potential to treat almost everything: multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, rheumatoid arthritis, Tourette's, epilepsy, heart disease, obesity, various mental illnesses, and the holy grail of medicine, a cancer cure.
We feel that these cannabinoids give us an opportunity to study their functions, and see how we can exploit them, how we can manipulate these cannabinoids and the receptors to find cures for a large number of diseases currently in which there is particularly no cure.
As an immunologist, Dr. Nayagarkati and his researchers at the University of South Carolina are exploring the impact cannabinoids and the CB2 receptors have on the human immune system. Both U.S. reports on marijuana found the cannabinoids do suppress the immune system, and previously this was seen as a concern. But Dr. Nayagarkati believes tamping down the immune system could be a good thing. Is a concern, but Dr. Nayagarkati believes tamping down the immune system could be a good thing.
There are about 80 different autoimmune diseases, and basically autoimmune diseases are triggered by your immune system going haywire, getting hyperactivated and destroying certain cells and certain tissues.
In multiple sclerosis, for example, the immune system suddenly begins attacking the brain and the spinal cord. Rheumatoid arthritis and lupus are similar diseases caused by the chronic inflammation associated with an immune system gone amok.
The cannabinoids dampen down response to bacteria or foreign agents or injury to tissues.
A lot of scientists and researchers are interested in those properties of the cannabinoids, in trying to see how we can suppress the immune response in autoimmune disease conditions.
For Dr. Nayagar-Katti, the research has gone far beyond treating inflammatory problems. He's narrowing in on the potential of cannabinoids to kill immune cells that have mutated and become cancerous. Once they become cancerous, they no longer die a normal cell death. Instead, they begin growing and spreading uncontrollably.
We were one of the first labs to demonstrate basically that not only the immune cells, the normal immune cells express these cannabinoid receptors called the CB2 receptors, but also that when these immune cells get transformed and they become cancer, to our surprise, we found that these cancer cells continue to express these CB2 receptors.
This was an exciting discovery because the CB2 receptor can act like a target for the cannabinoids. Once they bind with the receptor, they can tell the cancer cell to die.
So basically telling the cells basically to commit suicide, and that's what they do. And we demonstrated that that would be the mechanism by which the cannabinoids can kill the cancer, and therefore it can be used effectively as an anti-cancer agent.
Dr. Nayagar-Katti and his researchers were able to eradicate almost 100% of the cancer in test tubes. But they were skeptical they would see similar results when they moved on to tumors in mice.
To our surprise, we found that almost 25 to 30% of the mice completely rejected the tumor. They were completely cured. And in addition, we found that the remaining mice also, there was a significant reduction in the volume or the size of the tumors as well.
The lab results have been so promising that Dr. Nayagar-Katti is beginning clinical trials with leukemia patients. There's no doubt in his mind that the cannabinoids, either from the plant or lab created, will play a major role in medicine in the future.
I feel that in the next 5 or 10 years, there is going to be exponential growth in cannabinoid research.
It's an area where both the critics and the advocates agree. Scientists are now well on their way to developing medicines based on the cannabinoids. It begs the question, however, will modern medicine eventually make the marijuana plant obsolete?
No, it will not. In fact, it will only enhance it. Okay, because now it's more proof that the plant really does work. Okay, and instead of spending $600 a month on buying the pharmaceutical drug, I can grow my own plants.
They may come across some things that are better than herbal marijuana for one thing or another, and good luck to them. I'd love that. But I never want to see compromised the capacity of people to use herbal marijuana, whether it's because the drug that they've come up with is much more expensive, or it doesn't do as well, or whatever the reason. That people should always have herbal marijuana available to them without any constraints from the law. There are no deaths from cannabis use anywhere. You can't find one.
In 10,000 years of known use of marijuana, there's never been a single death attributed to marijuana. There's 400,000 deaths in America alone every year that are directly attributed to tobacco.
I've heard that you have to smoke something like 15,000 joints in 20 minutes to get a toxic amount of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. I challenge anybody to do that.
And even in the animal studies where people have loaded the animals up with doses that would be hundreds of times what a human could possibly be exposed to, no, the animals don't die. The LD50 seems to be astronomical.
I mean, you can die from ingesting too much aspirin. You can die from ingesting too much coffee.
The drug warriors who say we have to protect society, save these people, are being just a little bit disingenuous.
Now, why would pharmaceuticals be threatened by a plant? The answer may be as simple as one word. Natural. Because a significant amount of research to date has confirmed or suggested that marijuana in its natural state is still the most effective form. Can you imagine a world where you or I wouldn't have to pay for certain medicines?
After dealing with about 10,000 patients over the last 15 years, I would say that over 200 different medical conditions respond favorably to cannabis.
It appears to have benefits that we never ever knew about.
glaucoma,
epilepsy, muscular dystrophy,
arthritis,
multiple sclerosis,
wasting syndrome,
nausea, chronic pain,
depression, anxiety, hepatitis C, cancer,
chemo,
AIDS patients.
Is there a product out there today that provides as many medical benefits as cannabis?
Yeah, more cannabis.
No. It remains an unutilized major resource.
The way to riches in the pharmaceutical industry
is
to have a drug which can be patented.
Cannabis is problematic right from the start because it's a multi-molecule drug.
In 1930, it wasn't possible to patent plants, and that's the reason that pharma never picked up on this, because by synthesizing and owning compounds, that's where the profit motive comes into the pharmaceutical industry.
The patent in the United States lasts for 20 years. Well, you can charge whatever you want at that time, and that's where you make the killing.
There's no money to be made off natural plants. If you can use a natural medicine that you can grow in your own home, which costs pennies to use, you're going to do that.
You need water and dirt. Not only that, you have that plant forever.
Prime motivation behind any drug company is to make money, and as much money as possible.
They're corporations, and corporations, everybody knows that it's like that diffusion of responsibility thing. There's so many people working for corporations that they lose their humanity.
So those are potential customers for these pharmaceutical companies that are not there if they're using a natural plant.
It's unlimited. Grow more, you get more medicine. Pharmaceutical companies don't want you growing your own medicine. The government supported a small drug company by the name of Unimed to take a synthetic THC tetrahydrocannabinol and to put it into capsules to be used as a oral medicine. This became Marinol. This THC in Marinol is exactly the same 21 carbon molecule that's in herbal marijuana.
But it's not the same as medical marijuana. It's not a crude mixture of things, and there's no guarantee that you get the same results.
You can make a synthetic delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol in a test tube. It'll have exactly the same number of atoms and the same arrangement. But how in the test tube can you put the electron spins together, the subatomic quirks and quarks, if you like, of that compound in the same way that a biological enzyme system will put it together? It can't happen.
In the case of a synthetic compound, if it's only an ingredient from the cannabis, they can formulate that as a drug and make a lot more money.
Fuck man, I've got to suspend GTA.
I have a lot of faith in pharmaceutical companies and their ability to make money. And I think that if you take a look at what's going on now,